Hi guys, how are you all doing? Welcome to episode 10 of Morning Chai and Ikigai. This is your podcast host Priyanka. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you a short story that I have written. I hope you all like it. To stay updated of more such stories and content, you know what you got to do. Just subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. So, without further ado, I will now read out my story titled The Marriage. Do listen till the end. He sat awake watching her sleep. She looked so peaceful and serene. She could never be this calm when awake. It was as if the state of wakefulness filled her up with some kind of nervous tension. She would be all over the place, desperately trying to organize her life in medicine cabinets and kitchen shelves. He wished he could help her with it somehow, if only she'd let him. But he knew he couldn't. Some people were just born warriors. When she wasn't a warrior, she was a warrior, picking fights over the tiniest things, finding flaws when there were none. It had almost become a habit now. With no other alternative at hand, he would stay silent and allow her to vent out her frustrations on him. He acknowledged it was coming from some deeper place of insecurity, of inadequacy, a void she was constantly trying to fill. But how could he help someone who didn't want to be helped? So he'd just stay mum and bear the brunt of her ill conceived notions and unreasonable demands. He sometimes felt he could not take it anymore. It was better to part ways than live like this. But he was a God fearing man. And every Sunday he would go to confession only to be reminded by Father Francis that good men stay true to their marriage vows. In good times and in bad times, in sickness and in health, he recalled standing at the altar making a secret promise to her, with God as his witness. So every time he felt at his wits' ends, he would pacify himself, thinking these were the bad times they had to pull through. However, the truth was, the good times had never arrived. The plague that was eating into their marriage had been showing no sign of abating. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen her smiling. Unbeknownst to him, the stress was taking a toll on his mental psyche. He himself hadn't laughed in ages. Sitting by her side, he now stared at his reflection in the mirror. They both looked more at peace tonight. She, as she lay still with her eyes closed, having drifted into a deep sleep far away from the tension and gloom, the conflict and conundrum she otherwise endured and made him endure. And he, himself feeling better from deep within, as if the constant static that had been running inside him all these years had finally been turned off, and a gentle silence had taken his place. He retrieved his violin from its case. He hadn't touched it in months. She wasn't supportive towards his music. But tonight was a special night. She surely wouldn't mind it. She was too fast asleep anyway. He could not control the exuberance that was exuding from his soul. He had to give form to his delight. He had to make music. Gazing at his sleeping wife, careful not to disturb her sweet slumber, he started playing a soft tune. The undisturbed calm on her face was intact, and this made him beam as well. They were finally sharing a romantic silence that they could never otherwise share in a wakeful state. He was sitting there by the bed in the morning, still playing his violin. A couple of neighbors had gathered outside his apartment. They were calling out to him, banging their fists on the door. But their voices fell on deaf ears. He continued playing. The pillow in the cream-colored embroidered cover still lay on his lap. The pillow which he had used to smother her. It had been the middle of the night when he had seen her asleep and had had the sudden urge to end it once and for all. The voice in his head had told him it was a now or never moment, and he had chosen now. Pushing a pillow down on her face, ignoring the desperate flailing of her hands and legs, he had held on tightly until the gasps had started ceasing, until all her attempts to blindly lash out at him had failed. He had only loosened his hold when her arms fell limp by her side. It had felt as if something inside him had snapped then, but he was feeling liberated all the same. He wanted to break into a song, he wanted to dance, he wanted to create music. It was as if something had ignited a spark of madness inside him, and it was soon changing into a forest fire. For the first time in ages, he found himself smiling, laughing almost. He felt a surge of a positive emotion, but he couldn't place a finger on it. And that was when his eyes had fallen on the violin. However, a crime like that cannot be concealed, especially when one has suspecting neighbors and open windows. So when he did not answer the door in the morning, they suspected trouble. When the police arrived, they broke open the door only to find him sitting beside the cold, lifeless body of his wife. He was still playing the violin, a manic grin on his face, his empty eyes occasionally stealing glances at his dead wife. Just before they handcuffed him, he bent down and whispered in her ears the sacred words that had changed his life forever. In good times and in bad times, in sickness and in health, till death do us apart. He was convinced he was a good man, for a good man always kept his word. Morning Chai and Ikigai is a bi-weekly podcast. That means fresh episodes will be uploaded every Thursday and Sunday. If you want to connect with me outside the pod, I am there on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is Dr. Priyanka Naik, that is Dr. Priyanka Naik. I'm also there on Facebook, and my YouTube channel is Dr. Priyanka Naik again. So do subscribe, leave me a comment, or rate and review my podcast. I also blog at drpriyankanaik.com.